I can still picture it, the exact moment my childhood ended at just 12 years old. It was a Tuesday evening, late in the autumn, just after we'd finished supper. The whole house was quiet, except for the ticking of that old grandfather clock in the hall. I was at the kitchen sink, my hands in the warm, soapy water, when I felt him. Right behind me. It was my eldest brother, Jacob. I could feel his hot breath on my neck. "Don't turn around," he whispered. His fingers dug into my hips, hard. I froze. The plate I was holding slipped right out of my hands and fell back into the water with a soft little splash. And that was just the beginning. Over the next year, all of them, each of my 5 brothers, found their way into my bed. They took turns in the dark. Their hands were rough, silencing my whimpers with threats that made my blood run cold. "You tell anyone," they'd say, "and we'll tell Father it was your idea." When the morning sickness started, I prayed it was just some kind of stomach flu. But the weeks went by, and my belly started to swell. The truth became impossible to hide. The day my father noticed, he didn't say a word. He just unbuckled his belt with this terrifying calm. The leather cut into my skin with every lash, but the worst pain came from what he said. "You filthy little whore. You've shamed this family." That night, he locked me in the cellar with nothing but a thin blanket and a bucket. And down there, in the cold and the dark, I made a promise to myself. I promised that if I survived this, if I lived through the hell my own family had created for me, I would make sure no other girl ever had to suffer like that again. What happened next? Well, let's just say that sometimes justice doesn't come from a courtroom. Sometimes it comes from the trembling hands of a broken girl who's finally had enough. My name is Grace, and I'm 78 years old, and this is my story. Before I continue, comment, let me know where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. It wasn't a home, it was a prison. For 3 months, the cellar was my entire world. Cold, unforgiving stone walls, the reek of damp earth clinging to everything. And the only sign of life from outside was the occasional scrap of bread slid under the door. My body changed, grew, while inside, my spirit just withered away. Then, one frozen January morning, she came. Old Mrs. Peabody, the village midwife, her hands trembling in the lantern light as she brought my baby into the world. "It's a girl," she whispered, her voice barely a breath, as she wrapped the tiny, new life in her apron. That's when I heard him. My father's heavy footsteps on the stairs. He burst in, snatched my daughter away before I could even hold her, before I could truly see her face. "You'll never see this bastard child again," he spat, his words a venomous curse. The door slammed shut. The lock clicked with a finality that echoed in the silence, leaving me alone with the blood and the emptiness. But fate, as they say, works in mysterious ways. 2 nights later, Mrs. Peabody was back. Through the small, grimy cellar window, her hand reached in, passing me a bundle. It wasn't my baby, but it was something far more dangerous. A book of matches, a small can of kerosene, and then a whispered message that ignited a spark within me. "The menfolk are all going to the cattle auction tomorrow. The house will be empty except for your mother." Her wrinkled hand squeezed mine, a silent promise. "Burn it all, child. Burn it and run. Head for the railroad tracks by the creek. I'll have someone waiting." In that moment, I knew this wasn't just about escaping anymore. This was war. And for the first time in a long time, I was ready to fight back. Before the cellar, before the fire, there was just a girl, me, who believed in family. Our old farmhouse sat at the end of Dusty Hollow Road. You couldn't miss it, white paint peeling like skin after a long day under the sun. Father ruled that house like a kingdom, with a Bible in one hand and a belt in the other. Children should be seen, not heard, he'd say, his breath always thick with rye whiskey. My brothers were my whole world, Jacob, Eli, Samuel, Micah, and little Noah. Though, by then, Noah wasn't so little anymore. It started slow. A hand that lingered too long while we did chores. A brush against my chest as someone reached for the milk pail. Rough fingers snagging my dress hem in the barn. And then the nights. Jacob came first. I'll never forget the feel of his calloused hand covering my mouth as he whispered, "This is what big brothers do." Then came the others, one by one, like wolves in sheep's clothing. Each night, a different shadow in the dark. Each one taking his turn in my narrow bed. When I finally got the courage to tell Father, he hit me. Hard. I saw stars. Liar. He screamed. My boys would never. He made me kneel for hours on dried corn kernels while he read psalms about purity. But the real nightmare began when I stopped bleeding. Eli noticed first. He'd been training to be a medic for the army, so he saw the signs right away. One look at my chest, and he laughed, that horrible, gravelly laugh of his. "Well, boys," he said, "looks like we're going to be uncles." After that, they locked me up in the hayloft during the day. Told the neighbors I'd gone off to take care of a sick aunt. Mother knew. Oh, she knew. She'd just sit at dinner, eyes locked on my belly, lips moving in quiet little prayers. But she never said a word. Not when Father started starving me to shrink the devil's spawn. Not when Micah punched my stomach, thinking he could fix his mistake. And definitely not the night they dragged me to the cellar. The morning I realized I was late. My hands shook so bad, I could barely button my dress. I must have counted the days 100 times. Over and over. Each count twisted my stomach tighter, like someone wringing out a soaked rag. I tried to stay calm. I really did. But when Eli caught me throwing up behind the chicken coop, something in his eyes changed. Dark, like thunder before the storm. He didn't say much, just grabbed my arm and dragged me to the barn, shoved me down onto the hay bales, pressed his ear to my belly, cold and clinical like some kind of doctor. Then he laughed. That sound, it crawled down my spine like spiders. "Congratulations, little sister," he whispered, his breath warm and wet against my ear. "You're carrying my child." That night, I wasn't even called to the family meeting. I just sat upstairs in the dark, listening. I heard Father's chair slam against the kitchen floor. "We'll fix this," he growled. And the fixing? It started at dawn. Father forced me to drink these bitter teas. They burned going down, made my belly cramp until I screamed. When that didn't work, Samuel held me down. Micah stood over me and punched my stomach like he was working a job. Over and over. Just helping nature along, he muttered with every blow. 2 weeks. 2 weeks of pain and prayers that weren't mine. And still, my belly grew. That's when Father locked me in the root cellar. No light. No food but scraps. Just a Bible. And one candle. "Pray for God to take this bastard child," he said, "or I will." But down there, in that damp black silence, I felt something. A flutter. Not pain. Not gas. Life. And something inside me cracked open. But it wasn't fear. It was fury. I found a rusted nail in the corner and used it to scratch plans into the dirt. The auction date, when they'd all be gone. The hiding place of the cellar key. Where the kerosene cans were kept in the barn. As my daughter grew inside me, so did something else. A fire. A resolve. They thought they were breaking me. What they didn't know was that they were forging me into something far more dangerous. A mother with nothing left to lose. Winter came early that year. The cold found its way into the cellar, frosting the walls with sharp, cruel fingers of ice. Every breath, I took hung in the air like a ghost. And I'd sit there in the dark, tracing my swollen belly, just trying to feel something that didn't hurt. The men, my brothers, they didn't come for what they used to anymore. No, now they came to punish. Jacob would shove bitter herbs down my throat until I vomited. Micah made me stand barefoot on the frozen dirt floor for hours. He'd spit, should have kept your legs closed. Then slam the door behind him like punctuation. Through it all, Mother brought my food, always in silence. She used to have the warmest eyes, soft like fresh honey in the sun. But now she looked through me, like I was already gone. One morning, she set down a bowl of thin gruel, and I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed her wrist. "Mama," I whispered. My tears cut lines through the dirt on my face. Her hand trembled just for a second. Then she pulled away hard. "You made your bed," she said, her voice cracking like thin ice. That night, Father came with the preacher. They stood over me like shadows cast from hell, reading scripture, mumbling curses, calling for the demon seed to be cast out. Then the preacher reached down, tried to touch my belly with his clammy, shaking hands. So I bit him. Hard. I tasted blood. The beating that followed, it left me coughing red into the straw. But the moon kept rising, and as it waxed full, my body kept changing in ways that scared me. My hips ached. My breasts began to leak, and the baby inside me, she twisted and turned like she was trying to make her own escape. Then came Mrs. Peabody. I still don't know how she knew, but some nights, just past midnight, I'd see her face in the kitchen window. That old midwife. She started pressing jars of honey and tins of beef broth into my hands when no one was looking. "Eat, child," she'd whisper. "Your daughter needs your strength." And then, one night in February, colder than death, she slid a knife under the cellar door. "Hide this," she said. "Your time's coming soon." That knife became my secret, my companion. Its cool metal against my palm was the only comfort I had left in that endless dark. The night I tried to escape, it started like any other. The cellar door creaked open. That same flickering lantern light stabbed at my eyes. After so many hours swallowed by darkness. But this time, it was only Noah, his face still soft, boyish flushed red from drink. And in his haze, he forgot to relock the padlock. I waited until the house was still, until every board stopped groaning, until the grandfather clock upstairs struck 3 long, hollow chimes, each one shaking the bones of the house, and mine. With my belly heavy and aching, I crawled up the wooden steps, each creak screaming like a gunshot in the silence. The kitchen smelled like burnt grease, and something else. Shame, maybe, regret. Moonlight poured in through the window and caught the glint of Mother's prized butcher knife. Right there on the wall. I took it. Outside. The February wind cut through my thin cotton dress like it wasn't even there. I ran, barefoot, across frozen fields. Each breath a ragged sob. The knife clutched to my chest, like a prayer. The baby kicked, hard, almost like she knew, like she was saying, "Run, Mama, run." I made it past the creek, past Old Man Turner's mill, long since abandoned, all the way to the county road. The asphalt burned my frozen feet. Then, I heard it, a truck, its engine low, growling. Headlights blinded me, gravel spitting up around my legs. It was Father. He didn't even get out, just leaned over and opened the passenger door. His face in the dashboard light looked like it had been carved from stone. "Get in," he said. Just 2 words, but they turned my blood to ice. The ride back was silent, except for my chattering teeth and the sound of something dying inside me. When we pulled into the yard, they were all there, all 5 of them, standing in their work clothes like it was any regular morning. Eli was coiling a rope around his fist, real slow, like a cowboy readying his lasso. What happened next? God, I try to forget. The snap of my arm when Father slammed it in the barn door. The way Samuel pinned me down while Jacob pried the knife from my hand, then pressed the cold blade to my throat. Try that again, he whispered, and I'll cut the bastard out myself. But the worst part, it was Noah, little Noah, standing in the corner, tears pouring down his cheeks, and doing nothing to stop them. The pain from my broken arm, it became my shadow, always there, throbbing in sync with the baby's kicks, like a cruel lullaby I never asked for. After that night, they chained me to the cellar wall. Iron cuff locked around my ankle, so tight the skin cracked and bled. The spring rains came, and the dirt floor turned to thick mud that sucked at my bare feet. I'd sit there for hours, watching spiders crawl through the cracks in the stone, free to come and go. I envied them. God help me, I envied the spiders. But it wasn't just food I was starving for anymore. It was kindness. Any sign that anyone still saw me as human. Then one evening, while the men were off at prayer meeting, and the last light of the sun clung to the cellar window like it was afraid to let go, the door opened. Quietly. No shouting. No boots. Just her. Mrs. Peabody. Silhouetted in the fading light. Basket in hand. Filled with rags. A brown bottle. And the faint scent of lavender. Hope smelled like lavender that day. She moved fast, no hesitation. Knelt beside me in the filth like it was nothing new. Her hands, weathered, sure, splinted my arm with hickory sticks and strips of fabric torn from her own petticoat. She poured something bitter down my throat. It burned like fire, but soon the pain faded. Not gone, just quieter. That's my special recipe, she said. Learned it from my grandma, who learned it from the Shawnee women. Then her hands brushed my belly, and her eyes, usually sharp enough to slice through bone. They softened. She's strong, this one, she murmured. Got her mama's fight. And then she said it, the thing that shattered the ground beneath me. I knew your real mama, Maeve, pretty Irish girl with copper hair, and a laugh that lit up rooms. Worked the mill in Millersburg, died birthing you. I stopped breathing. She wasn't done. Your daddy, the man upstairs, bought you that same night. $10 and a laying hen. The truth hit me like a winter wave to the chest. I wasn't family. I wasn't a daughter. I was a transaction. Livestock. Bought and broken. Then Mrs. Peabody pressed a key into my hand. Rusty. Still warm from her grip. Menfolk leave for the cattle auction Tuesday, she whispered. Be gone before first light. Head for the old willow by the creek. I'll leave supplies there. Her eyes dropped to my belly again. Baby's coming soon, ready or not. She turned to leave, then paused. There was something heavier in her voice now, like stone dragging through water. One more thing, she said. The man who owns the railroad camp up near Black Mountain. He pays good money for healthy babies. Enough to start over. Far from here. And just like that, her offer wasn't just escape. It was a bargain. My freedom. For my daughters. That night, with water dripping through the beams and rats rustling through old grain sacks, I held my belly, felt my child roll beneath my ribs, and made the hardest promise of my life. I'd let them take her, to save her from this house of monsters. But I pressed my lips to my stomach and whispered through tears and clenched teeth. This isn't forever. One day, when the wounds had healed, and The fire inside me had burned down to coals. I'd come for her, even if I had to tear through every railroad camp from here to Canada, even if I had to bleed for every step. I would hold my daughter again, and I'd burn the world down to make it happen. Outside, thunder rumbled, low, distant, but growing closer. A floorboard creaked above me, not one of theirs. Something new. The game had begun. The pieces were moving. And come Tuesday morning, this house was going to learn what happens when a cornered animal finally decides to fight. The morning of the cattle auction, the sky was low and gray, the air thick, like even God was holding his breath. From the cellar, I watched them load up the truck. My brothers, laughing like they didn't have the devil in their bones. Father was the last to go. He turned at the door and looked at the woman he called his wife. "Keep her locked up tight," he said. "We'll deal with that bastard child when we get back." Then they were gone. The truck rumbled off down the dirt road, dragging a cloud of dust behind it, like the end of a bad dream. Not 5 minutes later, the cellar door creaked open. And this time, it wasn't rage that came through. It was Mrs. Peabody. Her hands shook as she turned the key in the lock. "It's time, child," she whispered, helping me up the steps. The kitchen was dead quiet. The clock ticked too loud on the wall. The woman upstairs, the one who raised me with silence and slaps, she just sat at the table, staring at nothing. Didn't even blink as we passed. Mrs. Peabody had packed a bundle. A man's old coat, a canteen of water, and a small purse with a few crumpled dollar bills. The willow by the creek, she reminded me, pressing it all into my hands. That's when it happened. The first pain. It hit like lightning. Hot, sharp, unforgiving. I doubled over, gasping. Mrs. Peabody's face went pale. "No, no, no, it's too soon," she muttered, but my body didn't care. Another wave came, harder this time. Then warmth down my legs. It had started. We didn't make it far. She brought me to her cabin on the edge of the woods, where I labored for hours through a storm that rattled the windows. Mrs. Peabody never left my side. Her hands steady, her voice calm. And when my daughter came, when she let out that first cry, I thought my heart might split wide open. She was perfect. Tiny fingers, tiny toes, and dark hair. Hair like his. The thought made my stomach turn. Mrs. Peabody wrapped her up in a soft blanket. "We need to move fast," she said. "They'll be back by sundown." She handed me a train ticket, midnight train north. "This will take you to Chicago. After that, you disappear." Then she reached for the baby. I held on tighter, my arms shaking. Her voice was soft, but firm. "Remember our agreement." My throat clenched. Tears spilled before I could stop them. I pressed one last kiss to my daughter's warm forehead. "I'll find you," I whispered. "I swear it." She nodded, then gently took the baby, tucked her into a basket lined with sheep's wool. "Go now," she said. "Follow the creek to the tracks. Don't look back." So I ran, out into the storm, the rain falling in sheets, washing away the blood, the pain, and the past. By the time I reached the old willow, I heard it. An engine. Too soon. Too soon. I pressed myself against the trunk, watched as the truck pulled up to the house. The doors flying open, voices shouting. And then I saw him, Eli, standing in the rain, holding something in his arms. A bundle. My daughter. My breath stopped. He must have found Mrs. Peabody. Must have taken her. His eyes found me through the downpour. And slowly, he smiled. "There you are," he called out. "Did you really think you could take what's mine?" He held her up like a trophy, like a prize. Everything in me snapped. The beatings, the chains, Every whispered threat, every bruise, all of it turned to fire. He stepped closer. "You're mine forever," he said, voice like oil in the rain. But he didn't see my hand slip into the coat pocket. Didn't see what Mrs. Peabody left me. The cold metal, smooth in my fingers. And in that moment, I knew the game had changed. And this time, I held all the cards. Time stopped. My fingers tightened around the cold steel in my pocket. Rain lashed against my face, washing the tears away before they even had the chance to fall. Eli stood just 20 paces away. My daughter cradled in one arm like she was nothing, his other hand resting on the hunting knife at his belt. Behind him, my brothers spread out, wolves ready to close in. The truck's headlights cast long, twisted shadows across the yard, like monsters rising up from the mud. "Give her to me," I said. My voice didn't shake, though everything else did. The weight of Mrs. Peabody's old revolver in my pocket held me steady. 5 bullets. Just enough. Eli laughed. That same cruel, mocking laugh that used to curl beneath my skin. "Or what? You gonna cry some more?" He jostled the baby in his arm. She wailed, and it split me open, right down the middle. Then I saw it, a flicker of movement behind him. Mrs. Peabody, bloody but alive, creeping through the shadows with a pitchfork in her hands. Everything happened all at once. She lunged. Eli turned. And before I even knew what I was doing, the gun was in my hand. The first shot cracked like thunder. Eli staggered. That arrogant grin wiped clean from his face. As blood blossomed across his shirt, he dropped to his knees. My brothers froze. And for the first time in my life, I saw fear in their eyes. "Anyone else want to hold my baby?" I asked, gun steady in my trembling hands. Samuel moved for his weapon, and my second shot spun him straight to the ground. The others backed away, hands up, like scared little boys. Mrs. Peabody grabbed my daughter from Eli's arms, her voice hoarse as she shoved her toward me. "The train," she gasped. "You have to go now." But I couldn't leave. Not yet. Not before it was done. The woman who wasn't my mother stepped out onto the porch. She met my eyes and gave the smallest, quietest nod. So I marched them, what was left of them, into that cellar. The same one they'd kept me in. The same chains. Same keys. "You wanted to keep me here. So badly." I whispered as I locked the door. "Now you can stay." The truck engine roared as Mrs. Peabody climbed behind the wheel, and as we tore down that muddy road toward the station, I held my baby tight, her tiny fingers wrapped around mine. Unbreakable. Behind us, the barn lit up first, then the house, flames licking through the rain like they'd been waiting their whole lives to burn. The years after, they weren't easy, but they were ours. Chicago in the 60s was no paradise, but it wasn't Dusty Hollow either. I scrubbed floors, sewed buttons, found work, found peace, and always kept my daughter close. Mrs. Peabody's railroad contact turned out to be a kind widow who asked no questions and offered no judgment, just a place to start again. I kept my promise. When my daughter turned 18, I told her everything. The house, the cellar, the fire, the truth. She held me, let me cry, and then she looked at me and said, "You saved us both, Mama." Last year, a reporter from Millersburg tracked me down. They'd sold the old farm. New owners found horrors in the cellar. Bones, chains, a rusted padlock still bearing teeth marks. The story made headlines, but I never gave them my name. Some ghosts. They're better left buried. Now, I rock my granddaughter to sleep, her breath soft against my neck. And I think back to that night in the rain, to the choices I made, the lives I ended, and the one life I saved. The paper called it a tragedy. My daughter calls it a miracle. Me, I just call it survival. The cemetery grass crunched under my shoes, brittle from the season's first frost. 60 years had turned my hair to snow and curved my spine like the branches overhead. But nothing, not time, not age, not distance, could dull the memories that rose up the second I saw that headstone. Jacob William Holland, 1898 to 1965. Beloved father. The lie carved in stone made my stomach twist. My granddaughter squeezed my hand. You sure you want to do this, Grandma? She asked, her breath puffing out in little clouds. I nodded. Couldn't trust my voice, just yet. The cancers spread fast. Doctors say there's not much time left. And there was one last thing I had to do. Kneeling hurt, but I did it anyway. The grave dirt was cold, hard, like the man buried beneath it. Hello, Father, I whispered. The wind stole the words, carried them off like all the others I'd never had a chance to say. I brought someone to meet you. I pulled a photo from my coat pocket and set it at the base of the stone. My granddaughter, in her cap and gown, that bright spark in her eyes, that proud smile, everything they once tried to beat out of me. And just like that, the memories came flooding back. The sting of leather, the taste of iron in my mouth, the way he smiled when the preacher called me a whore in front of the whole congregation. My hands trembled, not from the cold. I used to dream about this moment. I said, about all the ways I'd make you pay if I ever stood over you like this. A crow cried out from somewhere beyond the headstones, its voice ragged, echoing. For years, I carried that hate like a stone in my chest, heavier than any chain you ever locked around my ankle. My granddaughter knelt beside me. Her warmth against my coat sleeve reminded me I wasn't alone anymore. I breathed deep, cold air in my lungs, sharp and clean. Then I held my baby girl for the first time. And I realized, you lost. My voice grew stronger. You lost the second I looked into her eyes. Because I got to love her the way nobody ever loved me. I got to become what you never were. The wind picked up then, howling through the stones like all the ghosts I used to carry. Tears slid down my cheeks, turning to frost. But I didn't wipe them away. I looked at that grave, at the name, at the lie. So here's what I came to say. I told him, I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I do. I deserve to be free. I touched the photo once more, my granddaughter's smile looking up at me from the stone. And I won't forget. Not what you did, not what I survived. And not the fire it took to make me who I am. Standing took everything. But I stood, because I still could. My granddaughter helped me up, steady and strong beside me. That's when I saw it. A patch of sunlight breaking through the clouds, falling across a nearby grave. Fresh flowers. Clean stone. Mrs. Peabody. Gone 10 years now. But someone still remembered her. Just like someone would remember me. Come on, Grandma, my granddaughter said, tucking her arm through mine. Let's go home. And for the first time in 60 years, when I thought of that farmhouse, I didn't see the fire. I saw the embers. I saw the cellar, empty, the chain still, the door unlocked. And I saw the road, the one that carried me out of hell and toward everything I'd built with my own blood and bones. We walked away together, leaving the past where it belonged, buried, but no longer chasing me. Back home, with a warm cup of tea between my hands and my granddaughter curled beside me on the couch, I finally exhaled a breath I didn't even realize I'd been holding. The TV murmured in the background. Some cooking show, the The kind where the host smiles too wide, and the food always turns out perfect. Not like real life. Not like my life where meals were missed and smiles, well, those had to be earned. The steam from my tea curled upward, disappearing into the air, like all the words I'd swallowed over the years. Beside me, my granddaughter's phone glowed in her hands. I watched her fingers fly across the screen, quick, confident. A different world from the one I knew at her age. Then she looked at me. That spark in her, I've come to know. Grandma, she said, hesitating a little. Your story. She chewed her lip, just like her mama used to. It could help people. She turned the screen toward me, one of those video sites the kids are always on. Will you let me share it? Just the way you told it to me. The room tilted slightly. I set the teacup down slow, the china clinking softly against the old side table. 60 years of silence doesn't break easily. My fingers drifted to the scar on my wrist, raised, pale, familiar. The one the Chicago doctor asked about all those years ago. Farming accident. I told him. Some lies become armor after a while. But then I thought of all the other girls still trapped in cellars of their own, some made of stone, some of silence. The ones staring up at cracked ceilings at 3 a.m., wondering if anyone would believe them, wondering if they'd ever matter again. And I knew. All right, I said softly. My voice didn't shake, but use my voice and my face. Some shadows need to be shown to be felt. That's why I'm telling you this now. Here, in these quiet moments. Because stories like mine don't end when the screen goes dark. They live on in the telling. They live in whispered confessions, in midnight conversations at kitchen tables, in the trembling silence between breaths, and finally, blessedly, in the shouting that can't be ignored anymore. So let me ask you something. Would you have done what I did? Could you have forgiven him after everything? If you think I made the right choice, drop a heart in the comments. If you believe justice was never served, leave a scale. I'll read every one. Not just the kind ones, the angry ones too, because anger has its place. God knows I carried it for a long, long time. And to you, the one watching quietly, hands shaking a little, flinching at the word seller. I see you. You're not invisible. Just because you never said it out loud doesn't mean your pain isn't real. This is your sign. Your moment. Your life is worth fighting for. And you don't have to do it alone. Smash that like button if you believe survivors. Let's light that number up until it burns bright enough to scare the shadows away. Until nobody gets to say, I didn't know, ever again. Before I go, just one last thing. That little girl, I was the one who thought she deserved it. She was wrong. Here's the truth. Evil doesn't win because it's strong. It wins because we're told to be quiet, to not cause trouble, to keep our pain tidy and private and polite. Well, I'm done with polite. If this story helps just one person find their voice, if it helps one soul crawl out of the dark and into the light, then every second of pain was worth it. Subscribe if you want to hear more voices like mine, because the world needs more truth tellers. Every scar becomes a roadmap for someone else's escape. As for me, I've said what I needed to say. The kettle's whistling in the kitchen, now. That shrill sound that once meant he was home, but now just means tea time. My granddaughter's laughing at something on her phone, that big, easy kind of laugh I never had at her age. And the sun's slanting through the curtains, soft and golden, drawing patterns on the floor that shift with the breeze. After 60 years, that's more than enough. That's everything. That's victory.